The world will test you in ways you never expected. It will break your plans. It will disappoint you. It will make you question people you once trusted. It will force you to face rejection, failure, loneliness, uncertainty, and pain. And sometimes you will do everything right and still lose. That is the reality nobody wants to hear. Life does not always reward good intentions. People do not always appreciate your loyalty. Hard work does not always produce immediate results. And being a good person does not guarantee that everyone will treat you well, but this is exactly why you must become ruthless. Not ruthless toward other people, ruthless toward the weakness inside yourself. Because the world does not have to destroy you directly, sometimes it only has to convince you to give up on yourself. It only has to make you believe that your failure defines you. It only has to make you afraid of rejection. It only has to make you dependent on approval. It only has to make you comfortable with excuses. And slowly, without realizing it, you become your own biggest obstacle. You know what you need to do, but you keep delaying it. You know which habits are destroying your future, but you keep defending them. You know which people constantly drain your energy, but you keep returning to them. You know that your attention is valuable, but you give it away to distractions every single day. This is where ruthlessness begins. You must become ruthless about your standards, ruthless about your discipline, ruthless about your time, ruthless about your attention, and ruthless about the excuses you use to protect yourself from discomfort. Your emotions will tell you to stop. Your fear will tell you that you are not ready. Your past will tell you that you have already failed too many times. Other people will tell you that your goals are unrealistic. But you must learn to separate information from limitation. Someone's opinion is not your destiny. A failure is not your identity. A rejection is not your value. A difficult season is not your entire life. You are allowed to struggle without surrendering. You are allowed to fail without becoming a failure. You are allowed to be hurt without becoming weak. And you are allowed to start again. But starting again requires something most people do not have: discipline. Motivation is unreliable. Confidence is unreliable. Other people's support is unreliable. But discipline can remain when everything else disappears. That is why you must stop waiting until you feel ready. You may never feel ready. You must act anyway. You must learn anyway. You must build anyway. You must continue anyway. Because the world does not become easier simply because you are tired. Your responsibilities do not disappear because you feel discouraged. Your goals do not become less important because someone disappointed you. And your future does not pause because your emotions are struggling. You have to learn how to keep moving while carrying discomfort. That is mental strength. The goal is not to become emotionless. The goal is to become stronger than your temporary emotions. Feel the fear. Then move, feel the doubt, then work, feel the rejection, then learn, feel the disappointment, then continue. This is what it means to become difficult to break. You stop asking life to become easier. You start becoming stronger. You stop demanding that everyone understand you. You start understanding yourself. You stop waiting for people to save you. You start taking responsibility for your own direction. And eventually you realize something powerful. The world does not have to become kinder for you to become stronger. You do not need perfect circumstances. You need stronger standards. You need clearer priorities. You need better habits. You need emotional control. And you need the courage to keep going when nobody is watching. Because your greatest enemy is often not the person standing against you. It is the version of you that keeps surrendering to comfort. Destroy that version, not with hatred, with discipline, not with anger, with consistency, not with revenge, with progress. Become ruthless about becoming better. Because once you stop negotiating with the weaknesses that keep holding you back, the world becomes much harder to break you. And the world becomes dangerous when you start expecting it to be fair. You expect people to appreciate your loyalty. You expect your hard work to be recognized. You expect those who love you to always stay. You expect good intentions to produce good outcomes. And when reality refuses to follow those expectations, you feel betrayed. But the problem is not always what happened. Sometimes the problem is what you expected to happen. You cannot control how people behave. You cannot control who supports you. You cannot control who misunderstands you. You cannot control who walks away, but you can control how much power you give their behavior. That is where emotional strength begins. Stop expecting everyone to understand your journey. Most people only see the result. They do not see the nights you struggled. They do not see the sacrifices you made. They do not see the failures you survived. They do not see how many times you almost gave up, and they do not have to. Your journey does not require their approval. You need to become comfortable working without recognition, because if you need applause before you continue, you will stop the moment the applause disappears. Work when nobody notices. Improve when nobody compliments you. Build when nobody believes in you. Stay disciplined when nobody is watching. This is where you develop an advantage over most people. Most people are motivated by external rewards. They need attention, they need validation, they need encouragement, they need someone telling them they are doing well. But if you can develop internal motivation, you become much harder to stop. You no longer need someone to push you every morning. You push yourself. You no longer need someone to remind you of your goals. You remember them. You no longer need someone to believe in your potential. You prove it through your actions. That is psychological independence. And it is one of the most valuable forms of strength you can develop. You must also become ruthless about your expectations. Do not expect everyone to have your values. Do not expect everyone to think like you. Do not expect everyone to care as deeply as you care. Some people will choose convenience over loyalty. Some will choose comfort over growth. Some will choose short-term pleasure over long-term success. That is their decision. You do not need to hate them for it. You simply need to understand what their choices tell you. Watch actions, not promises. Watch consistency, not temporary emotions. Watch what people do when they have nothing to gain. That is when character becomes visible. And once you understand this, you stop taking everything personally. Someone rejects you, learn from it. Someone ignores you, move forward. Someone underestimates you, let your results answer. Someone betrays you, adjust your boundaries. Someone leaves, accept the reality and continue building. You do not need to become bitter. You need to become wiser. There is a difference. Bitterness makes you suspicious of everyone. Wisdom makes you selective. Bitterness says, nobody can be trusted. Wisdom says, trust must be earned. Bitterness says, I will never care again. Wisdom says, I will care without abandoning myself. That is the mindset you need. Because becoming ruthless does not mean destroying your ability to love. It means becoming ruthless about protecting your direction. You can be kind without being weak. You can be generous without being available to everyone. You can forgive without forgetting the lesson. You can trust without becoming dependent. You can love someone without losing your identity. And you can walk away without becoming cruel. The goal is balance, strength without arrogance, confidence without desperation, kindness without weakness, ambition without obsession, and discipline without excuses. The world will constantly test these qualities. You will have days when you feel tired, days when you feel rejected, days when nothing seems to work, days when you question whether your effort is worth it. Those days matter more than the easy ones. Anyone can work when they are motivated. Anyone can remain confident when everything is going well. The real test comes when the results are slow, when nobody notices, when the plan fails, when the person you trusted disappoints you, when the opportunity disappears. That is when your character is being built. So do not waste those moments asking, why is this happening to me? Ask, what is this teaching me? Every difficult experience can give you information. Failure can teach you where your strategy was weak. Rejection can teach you where you need improvement. Betrayal can teach you how to recognize patterns. Loneliness can teach you self-reliance. Pressure can teach you discipline. And uncertainty can teach you patience. You do not have to enjoy pain to learn from it. You simply have to refuse to waste it. That is how you become stronger, not by avoiding every difficult experience, but by making every difficult experience useful. The world will break people who expect comfort, but it struggles to break people who have learned how to adapt. So become adaptable, become disciplined, become observant, become emotionally controlled, become relentless about your growth, not because you want to dominate everyone around you, but because you refuse to remain the same person who was easily controlled by fear, approval, comfort, and distraction. That is the kind of ruthlessness that changes your life. You will eventually discover that one of the greatest threats to your future is not failure, it is comfort. Comfort makes you believe that you have enough time. Comfort tells you that tomorrow will be better. Comfort convinces you that you can delay the difficult work, and slowly, without realizing it, comfort turns into stagnation. You begin accepting less from yourself. You stop challenging your weaknesses. You become familiar with excuses. You become comfortable with distractions. And eventually, the life you once wanted becomes something you only talk about. This is why you must become ruthless with your comfort zone. If something is important to you, you cannot always choose what feels easy. Growth often feels uncomfortable. Learning something new feels uncomfortable. Starting a business feels uncomfortable. Building a career feels uncomfortable. Changing your habits feels uncomfortable. Walking away from unhealthy relationships feels uncomfortable. Standing alone for your principles feels uncomfortable. But discomfort is not always a warning. Sometimes discomfort is evidence that you are growing. The problem is that your mind naturally wants to protect you from uncertainty. It prefers what is familiar. Even if what is familiar is damaging you, you can be unhappy with your current life and still be afraid to change it. You can know that a habit is hurting you and still repeat it. You can know that a relationship is unhealthy and still return to it. Why? Because familiarity feels safer than uncertainty. But safe does not always mean good. Sometimes the safest looking path is the one that slowly destroys your potential. That is why you need to learn to distinguish between genuine danger and temporary discomfort. Not every difficult feeling means you should stop. Sometimes fear simply means you are entering unfamiliar territory, and unfamiliar territory is where growth happens. You must also become ruthless about your time. Your time is not unlimited. Every hour you waste is an hour you can never recover. Yet people give away their time as if they have an infinite supply. They spend hours scrolling, hours arguing, hours watching other people's lives, hours worrying about opinions that will not matter in 5 years, hours replaying conversations that are already over, hours waiting for motivation. Then they complain that they do not have enough time to build their own future. You have enough time for what you consistently prioritize. That is the uncomfortable truth. If you spend your best hours on distractions, you cannot expect your remaining energy to produce extraordinary results. Protect your attention. Your attention determines what enters your mind. What enters your mind influences your thoughts. Your thoughts influence your decisions. Your decisions influence your habits, and your habits eventually shape your life. So if you allow everyone and everything to control your attention, you are indirectly allowing them to influence your future. This is why discipline begins with attention. Learn to sit without your phone. Learn to work without constant stimulation. Learn to study without checking notifications. Learn to focus without needing entertainment every few minutes. At first, it will feel difficult. That is normal. Your brain has become accustomed to constant stimulation, but you can retrain it. You can teach yourself to tolerate boredom. You can teach yourself to concentrate. You can teach yourself to delay gratification. And when you develop that ability, you gain an advantage that most people underestimate. You become capable of doing difficult things for long periods without needing immediate rewards. That is powerful, because most meaningful achievements require exactly that. You work for months before seeing results. You practice for years before becoming exceptional. You build relationships slowly. You develop expertise gradually. You save money gradually. You build a reputation gradually. There is no shortcut around consistency. And this is where ruthless discipline becomes important. You must stop asking, "Do I feel like doing this?" Ask instead, "Does this need to be done?" That question changes your behavior. If it needs to be done, do it. If it matters to your future, prioritize it. If it is destroying your progress, remove it. You cannot negotiate with every feeling. Some days you will feel motivated. Some days you will not. Your standards must remain. This does not mean ignoring legitimate exhaustion or pretending you never need rest. Rest is part of discipline. Recovery is part of discipline. But there is a difference between rest and avoidance. Rest prepares you to continue. Avoidance helps you escape responsibility, learn the difference, and become honest enough with yourself to admit when you are using "I need a break" as an excuse to avoid something uncomfortable. Your future self is watching every decision you make today. Every time you choose discipline over distraction, you strengthen yourself. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, you build self-trust. Every time you do what you said you would do, even when you do not feel like it, you become more reliable to yourself. And self-trust creates confidence. Not empty confidence, real confidence. The kind that comes from evidence. You know you can handle difficulty because you have handled it before. You know you can stay disciplined because you have practiced discipline. You know you can recover because you have recovered. You know you can continue because you have continued. That is the confidence you should build, not confidence based on compliments, confidence based on proof. So stop waiting for the perfect version of yourself to appear. Build that version through repetition. Wake up, do the work, learn, improve, rest, repeat. Some days will feel extraordinary, others will feel completely ordinary. Both matter, because transformation rarely happens in one dramatic moment. It happens through hundreds of small decisions that nobody notices. And one day, those small decisions become your identity. You become disciplined because you practice discipline. You become focused because you practice focus. You become resilient because you survive difficult moments. You become mentally strong because you repeatedly chose not to surrender. That is the kind of ruthlessness the world cannot easily break. You are no longer depending on perfect circumstances. You are building yourself to function even when circumstances are imperfect. And that is a completely different level of strength. The world will eventually teach you that not everyone deserves access to you. This is one of the hardest lessons to accept, because you naturally want to believe the best about people. You want to believe their promises. You want to believe their apologies. You want to believe that the person who says they care actually cares. But words are cheap. Patterns are expensive. Anyone can tell you they support you. Anyone can say they are proud of you. Anyone can promise they will never leave. But watch what happens when circumstances change. Watch what happens when you say no. Watch what happens when you stop giving them what they want. Watch what happens when you become more successful. Watch what happens when you become independent. Watch what happens when they no longer have control over you. That is when you begin seeing character. You do not need to become suspicious of everyone. You simply need to stop being blind to patterns. There is a difference between trust and naivety. Trust says, I believe you based on what you have consistently shown me. Naivety says, I believe you because I want your words to be true. You must learn the difference. Because if you ignore patterns, people can hurt you repeatedly while you keep calling it a mistake. One mistake can be forgiven. A repeated pattern must be understood. If someone lies once, you may choose to forgive. If someone lies constantly, you should change your level of trust. If someone makes one mistake, give them room to correct it. If someone repeatedly disrespects your boundaries, stop giving them unlimited access. This is not cruelty, it is self-respect. Your life becomes much more peaceful when you stop trying to convince people to treat you better. You cannot force someone to respect you. You cannot force someone to value you. You cannot force someone to become loyal. And you cannot force someone to have good intentions. What you can control is your access. You decide who gets your time. You decide who gets your attention. You decide who gets to know your plans. You decide who gets access to your vulnerabilities. And you decide who remains close when their behavior repeatedly proves they should not. This is where emotional strength becomes practical. You stop arguing, you stop explaining, you stop threatening, you simply adjust. Less access, less information, less emotional investment, more observation, more distance, more focus. This is powerful because you are no longer trying to control another person. You are controlling your own participation, and that is something nobody can take away from you. You also need to understand that not everyone who criticizes you is your enemy. This is important. If you become too ruthless, you can make another mistake. You can start believing that anyone who disagrees with you is against you. That is weakness disguised as confidence. A strong person can handle criticism. A strong person can admit mistakes. A strong person can listen when someone points out a flaw. Sometimes the person challenging you is the person helping you grow. The key is to examine the intention and the usefulness of the criticism. Does it help you improve? Does it point toward something specific? Is the person willing to explain their reasoning? Or are they simply trying to humiliate you? Learn the difference. Do not reject criticism simply because it hurts your ego, but do not accept every criticism simply because someone speaks confidently. Think, observe, decide. This is strategic thinking. You do not need to react immediately. You can pause. You can consider. You can decide later. That pause is powerful because most people lose control in the moment. They hear an insult and immediately respond. They receive bad news and panic. They feel rejected and start begging. They feel threatened and become aggressive. They feel insecure and start explaining themselves. But you can train yourself to pause. Take a breath. Observe what is happening. Ask what response actually serves your long-term interest. Then act. That small delay can completely change the quality of your decisions. Emotional control is not about suppressing emotions. It is about refusing to let emotions make every decision. You can feel anger without becoming destructive. You can feel fear without running away. You can feel disappointment without giving up. You can feel loneliness without chasing the wrong people. You can feel jealousy without becoming bitter. You can feel rejection without questioning your entire worth. That is emotional discipline. And emotional discipline is one of the strongest forms of personal power. Because when people realize they cannot easily trigger you, their ability to control you decreases. You become harder to manipulate, harder to intimidate, harder to distract, harder to break. But remember, ruthlessness should always have a purpose. Do not become ruthless because you want people to fear you. Become ruthless because you refuse to waste your potential. Do not become cold because someone hurt you. Become wiser because someone hurt you. Do not stop trusting everyone. Become better at deciding who deserves your trust. Do not isolate yourself from the world. Become selective about who you allow into your world. There is a huge difference. You can still be kind. You can still help people. You can still build friendships. You can still love deeply. But you should never have to sacrifice your identity to keep someone close. The moment you start abandoning your values to maintain a relationship, you are no longer protecting the relationship. You are destroying yourself. And no relationship is worth that price. Your future requires boundaries, your goals require focus, your peace requires selectivity, and your growth requires the courage to disappoint people who benefited from your lack of boundaries. Some people will call you selfish when you stop being endlessly available. Let them. Some people will say you have changed when you stop accepting disrespect. You probably have. Some people will become distant when you start protecting your time. That distance may reveal something important. Do not be afraid of that. You are not responsible for maintaining every relationship at the cost of your own progress. You are responsible for becoming the person you were meant to become. And sometimes that requires leaving behind habits, environments, and relationships that no longer support your direction. This is not about becoming ruthless toward people. It is about becoming ruthless toward what destroys your potential, your distractions, your excuses, your need for approval. Your fear of rejection, your addiction to comfort, your habit of procrastination, your tendency to overthink, your inability to say no. These are the enemies you need to confront. Because if you defeat these weaknesses, you will not need to dominate anyone. You will simply become stronger. And when you become stronger, you gain something much more valuable than control over others. You gain control over yourself. That is the kind of power nobody can easily take away. The world will eventually force you to understand the difference between being kind and being weak. Many people confuse the two. They think being a good person means always saying yes, always forgiving, always helping, always being available, always giving another chance. But there is a point where kindness without boundaries becomes self-destruction. You cannot save everyone. You cannot fix everyone. You cannot carry everyone's problems. And you cannot sacrifice your entire future just to keep other people comfortable. There is nothing noble about destroying yourself for people who would never do the same for you. This is why you need boundaries. A boundary is not hatred. A boundary is not revenge. A boundary is a decision about what you will accept and what you will no longer tolerate. You can respect someone and still say no. You can love someone and still walk away. You can forgive someone and still refuse to trust them again. You can understand someone's pain without allowing them to use that pain as an excuse to hurt you. This is maturity. And maturity requires ruthlessness. Ruthlessness means being willing to make difficult decisions even when your emotions tell you otherwise. Sometimes you have to leave. Sometimes you have to say no. Sometimes you have to stop explaining. Sometimes you have to disappoint people. Sometimes you have to choose your future over your comfort. And sometimes you have to choose yourself. This is where many people fail. They are terrified of disappointing others. They say yes when they want to say no. They stay when they want to leave. They remain silent when they need to speak. They apologize when they did nothing wrong. They accept disrespect because they are afraid that setting boundaries will cost them the relationship. But think about the price of never setting boundaries. You lose time, you lose energy, you lose confidence, you lose focus, and eventually you lose yourself. You become so focused on keeping everyone happy that you forget to ask whether you are happy with the life you are creating. That cannot continue. You need to understand that some people will only respect you after you stop making it easy to disrespect you. They may become angry when you establish boundaries. They may call you selfish. They may say you have changed, or they may accuse you of becoming cold, but sometimes the person complaining about your boundaries is the person who benefited most from you having none. Remember that. Not everyone deserves unlimited access to you. Your time is limited. Your attention is limited. Your emotional energy is limited. And every time you give these things away, you are taking them away from something else. Your goals, your family, your work, your health, your future, your own development. This is why learning to say no is not a small social skill. It is a life skill. No protects your priorities. No protects your focus. No protects your identity. No prevents you from becoming trapped in obligations you never wanted. And most importantly, no teaches you that your own decisions matter. You do not need to justify every no. You do not need a 5-minute explanation. You do not need to convince someone that your boundary is reasonable. Sometimes a simple answer is enough. No, I cannot do that. I am not available. That does not work for me. I have decided to do something different. You can say these things calmly. You do not need anger. You do not need aggression. You do not need to prove anything. Calm boundaries are stronger than emotional arguments, and this principle applies to your own habits as well. You need to become ruthless with yourself. If your phone is destroying your focus, limit it. If certain content is destroying your attention, remove it. If procrastination is becoming your default behavior, interrupt it. If certain people constantly pull you away from your goals, create distance. If your environment keeps reinforcing weakness, change the environment. You cannot repeatedly expose yourself to the same distractions and then wonder why you keep falling back into the same habits. Your environment matters. Your routines matter. Your circle matters. Your inputs matter. What you consume every day slowly shapes what you think is normal. If you constantly consume negativity, outrage, comparison, and distraction, your mind becomes trained for negativity, outrage, comparison, and distraction. If you consistently consume useful knowledge, practice discipline, focus on meaningful work, and spend time around people who challenge you to grow your standards, begin to change. This is why you must protect your mental environment. Not everything deserves your attention. Not every argument deserves your response. Not every opinion deserves your consideration. Not every person deserves access to your private life. Not every opportunity deserves your time. Ruthlessness means learning to filter. You need to become selective, because saying yes to everything is not freedom. It is a lack of direction. A person with no priorities is controlled by whoever demands their attention next. And someone calls, you answer. Someone messages, you respond. Someone needs something, you drop your work. Someone wants entertainment, you abandon your goals. And at the end of the day, you wonder why nothing important gets done. You need priorities. Decide what matters, then protect it. If your goal is important, schedule time for it. If your health is important, protect your habits. If your education is important, protect your study time. If your business is important, protect your work hours. If your peace is important, protect your boundaries. Do not wait for other people to respect your priorities. You must respect them first, because people learn how to treat your time by watching how you treat it. If you are always available, they assume you will always be available. If you constantly cancel your plans for them, they assume your plans are less important. If you repeatedly tolerate disrespect, they assume disrespect has no consequences. You teach people your standards through your behavior, so raise those standards, not because you want to control people, because you want to control your own life. And understand something else. You will never become completely fearless. You will still feel guilt when you say no. You will still feel nervous when you set boundaries. You will still wonder whether someone will leave. You will still feel uncomfortable choosing yourself. Do it anyway. Courage is not the absence of discomfort. Courage is acting according to your values while discomfort is present. That is what makes it powerful. Every time you keep a boundary, you strengthen yourself. Every time you say no to something that distracts you, you strengthen yourself. Every time you choose long-term progress over short-term comfort, you strengthen yourself. And eventually you become someone who trusts yourself. You know that you will protect your own future. You know that you will not abandon yourself just to keep someone else happy. You know that you can walk away when necessary. You know that you can handle being misunderstood. And that creates a form of confidence that nobody can give you. It also creates a form of confidence that nobody can easily take away. So become ruthless, but be ruthless in the right direction. Be ruthless with your excuses. Be ruthless with your distractions. Be ruthless with your need for approval. Be ruthless with your fear of disappointing people. Be ruthless with the habits that keep you small, but remain compassionate toward people who are genuinely struggling. Remain honest, remain fair, remain human, because true strength does not require cruelty. It requires control. And the more control you develop over yourself, the less control other people have over your life. That is the real meaning of becoming ruthless. You are not becoming a monster. You are becoming someone who refuses to destroy themselves just to make everyone else comfortable. There is a moment in every difficult journey when you realize that nobody is coming to save you. Not because nobody cares, not because you are completely alone, but because your life is ultimately your responsibility. People can encourage you, people can advise you, people can support you, but nobody can do your work for you. Nobody can build your discipline for you. Nobody can control your emotions for you. Or nobody can make your decisions for you, and nobody can live your life for you. This realization can feel frightening at first, but eventually it becomes freedom, because once you accept responsibility for your life, you stop waiting for someone else to change your circumstances. You stop waiting for motivation, you stop waiting for permission, you stop waiting for the perfect opportunity, you stop waiting for someone to recognize your potential. You begin acting, and action changes everything. You may not have control over where you started. You may not have control over what happened to you. You may not have control over the mistakes you made in the past. But you have influence over what you do next. That is enough to begin. Too many people spend their lives explaining why they cannot move forward. They blame their childhood. They blame their circumstances. They blame other people. They blame the economy. They blame bad luck. They blame rejection. Sometimes those difficulties are real. But even when your circumstances are unfair, your next decision still belongs to you. This is where ruthless responsibility becomes powerful. You stop asking, whose fault is this? And start asking, what can I do now? That question moves you forward. Maybe you cannot change what happened yesterday, but you can learn from it. Maybe you cannot control someone's opinion, but you can improve your skills. Maybe you cannot force an opportunity to appear, but you can become ready when one does. Maybe you cannot make someone love you, but you can stop chasing someone who does not. Maybe you cannot erase failure, but you can use it to improve your strategy. This is the mindset of someone who refuses to remain a victim of circumstances, and it does not mean pretending everything is your fault. It means refusing to let circumstances become your permanent identity. You are not your worst mistake. You are not your biggest failure. You are not the rejection you experienced. You are not the opinion someone formed about you. You are the person who decides what happens next. That is where your power lives. But responsibility also means being honest with yourself. You cannot improve what you refuse to admit. If you are undisciplined, admit it. If you procrastinate, admit it. If you are easily distracted, admit it. If you seek too much validation, admit it. If you keep returning to people who hurt you, admit it. If you waste your potential, admit it. This is not self-hatred. It is self-awareness. You cannot solve a problem you keep pretending does not exist. The moment you become honest with yourself, you can begin changing. Maybe your habits are weak. Build stronger habits. Maybe your skills are not good enough. Learn. Maybe your confidence is low. Create evidence through action. Maybe your environment is holding you back. Change what you can. Maybe you keep choosing short-term pleasure over long-term progress. Practice delayed gratification. Do not expect transformation overnight. You are not going to become disciplined because you watched one motivational video. You become disciplined by repeatedly doing what needs to be done. You become confident by repeatedly keeping promises to yourself. You become resilient by surviving difficult experiences without abandoning your values. You become mentally strong through practice. That is why your daily decisions matter so much. The small decisions nobody sees are shaping the person everyone will eventually see. Every time you wake up and do the work instead of making excuses, you are building identity. Every time you resist a distraction, you are building identity. Every time you say no to something that harms your future, you are building identity. Every time you continue after failure, you are building identity. You are constantly voting for the person you will become, so choose carefully. Your future is not created by one huge decision. It is created by repeated choices. And repeated choices become habits. Habits become character. Character influences destiny. That is why you cannot afford to be careless with your daily behavior. You also need to stop comparing your journey to other people. Comparison destroys focus. Someone else may be ahead of you. Someone else may have more money. Someone else may have better connections. Someone else may have started earlier. Someone else may appear more successful. So what? Their timeline is not your timeline. Your responsibility is not to become them. Your responsibility is to become the strongest version of yourself. Comparison makes you focus on someone else's scoreboard. Discipline makes you focus on your own progress. Measure yourself against who you were yesterday. Are you more skilled, more disciplined, more patient, more focused, more emotionally controlled, more responsible? If the answer is yes, you are moving, and if the answer is no, you have information. Use it. Do not turn self-awareness into self-hatred. Turn it into action. This is another form of ruthlessness. You stop making excuses for yourself while also refusing to destroy yourself with criticism. You become honest without becoming cruel. You become demanding without becoming impossible to satisfy. You expect more from yourself because you believe you are capable of more. That is healthy ambition. And you need ambition because the world will not always push you forward. Sometimes you must push yourself. There will be seasons when nobody encourages you. There will be periods when your results are invisible. There will be moments when you question whether your effort is working. Continue, not blindly, strategically, adjust when necessary, learn when necessary, change direction when necessary, but do not confuse changing strategy with abandoning the mission. Sometimes the plan needs to change, the goal does not. And this is where patience becomes essential. You cannot force everything to happen immediately. Some things take time, skills take time, trust takes time, reputation takes time, financial stability takes time. Personal growth takes time. If you constantly demand immediate results, you will become vulnerable to shortcuts. And shortcuts often create long-term problems. Stay patient, stay consistent, stay alert. Keep learning, keep improving, and keep your attention on the long game, because the person who can delay gratification has an enormous advantage over the person who needs everything immediately. You do not need to win today. You need to keep becoming better. You do not need everyone to recognize you today. You need to keep building. You do not need to prove your worth today. You need to create evidence over time. And eventually your consistency becomes difficult to ignore. This is how you become difficult to break, not because life stops hurting, but because you stop allowing pain to decide your future. You stop allowing rejection to define you. You stop allowing failure to paralyze you. You stop allowing criticism to control your identity. You stop allowing comfort to destroy your ambition. You become responsible. You become disciplined. You become patient. You become strategic. And eventually you become dangerous to the old version of yourself. Because the person who once gave up easily no longer exists. The person who once needed constant approval is disappearing. The person who once allowed distractions to control every day is becoming disciplined. The person who once feared standing alone is learning self-reliance. That transformation is the real victory. The world may still be difficult. People may still disappoint you. Life may still surprise you. But you are different now. And that difference changes everything. There is another level of strength you must develop if you want to survive a world that constantly tests you. You must learn how to stand alone, not because you should reject everyone, not because you should become cold, but because you should never be so dependent on another person that their absence destroys your identity. People change, relationships change, circumstances change. Someone who promises to stay today may not be there tomorrow. Someone you trusted for years may disappoint you. Someone you expected to understand you may misunderstand you completely. This is life. And if your emotional stability depends on people behaving exactly as you expect, you will always be vulnerable. You need to become comfortable with uncertainty. You need to become comfortable with being misunderstood. You need to become comfortable with walking away when necessary. And most importantly, you need to become comfortable with your own company. When you can stand alone, you stop making desperate decisions. You stop accepting disrespect because you are afraid of loneliness. You stop staying in unhealthy relationships because you are afraid of starting over. You stop chasing people who have already chosen distance. You stop begging for attention. You stop explaining your worth, and you start making decisions based on what is right for your future. That is freedom. But standing alone does not mean isolating yourself. You can still build meaningful relationships. You can still trust people. You can still love deeply. You can still have friends. The difference is that you no longer need someone else to complete you. You become whole within yourself. And from that position, relationships become choices instead of necessities. You choose people because they add meaning to your life, not because you are terrified of being alone. That distinction changes everything. When you are desperate for someone to stay, you tolerate things you normally would not tolerate. You overlook disrespect. You excuse dishonesty. You ignore patterns. You compromise your values. You become smaller just to keep the relationship alive. But when you are secure within yourself, you can say, I care about you, but I will not abandon myself for you. That sentence represents emotional strength. You must also learn how to handle rejection. Rejection hurts. There is no need to pretend otherwise. But rejection does not automatically mean you are worthless. Sometimes someone simply does not want what you offer. Sometimes your goals do not match. Sometimes circumstances are wrong. Sometimes another person chooses differently. That does not make you inferior. Do not turn someone else's decision into a judgment of your entire identity. This is one of the greatest mistakes people make. They experience one rejection and suddenly decide they are not good enough. One failure becomes proof that they are incapable. One betrayal becomes proof that nobody can be trusted. One mistake becomes proof that they are a failure. That is emotional thinking. You need strategic thinking. Ask, what actually happened? What can I learn? What was within my control? What was outside my control? What should I change? What should I keep? These questions turn pain into information, and information can be used. You cannot control every outcome, but you can improve your strategy. That is why failure should not automatically make you quit. Sometimes failure is simply feedback. Maybe your approach was wrong. Maybe your timing was wrong. Maybe you lacked a skill. Maybe you did not prepare enough. Maybe the opportunity was not right. Whatever the reason, study it. Do not just feel it. This is the difference between emotional reaction and strategic response. A weak mindset says, I failed, so I am finished. A stronger mindset says, I failed. What does this teach me? That question keeps you moving. You also need to understand that becoming ruthless does not mean becoming obsessed with winning. Sometimes the smartest move is walking away. Not every opportunity is worth pursuing. Not every argument is worth winning. Not every relationship is worth saving. Not every goal is worth continuing if the goal itself no longer aligns with your values. Ruthlessness requires the ability to cut losses. You must know when to stop. If something repeatedly destroys your peace and provides no meaningful value, stop investing in it. If a strategy repeatedly fails despite serious adjustment, change it. If an environment consistently prevents growth, leave it when possible. If a relationship repeatedly violates your boundaries, create distance. Do not keep pouring energy into something simply because you have already invested so much. That is how people waste years. They think, I've already spent too much time here. But the time is already gone. The question is whether you want to spend more. Your future deserves consideration, not just your past investment. This is where strategic thinking becomes powerful. You stop asking, how much have I already given? And start asking, what is the best decision from this point forward? That question can save you years. You also need to protect yourself from the opinions of other people. People will always have opinions. Some will admire you, some will criticize you, some will underestimate you, some will misunderstand you, some will project their own fears onto you. You cannot manage all of that. If you try, you will become a prisoner of other people's perceptions. Your job is not to control what everyone thinks. Your job is to control your behavior. Let your work speak. Let your consistency speak. Let your results speak. You do not need to explain every decision. You do not need to defend every ambition. You do not need to prove yourself in every conversation. Sometimes silence protects your energy better than an argument ever could. This is especially important when you are building something. Keep your focus. Do not announce every move. Do not ask everyone for permission. Do not allow every opinion to become a vote on your future. Listen intelligently. Take useful criticism. Ignore unnecessary noise. Then continue, because the people who criticize you today may not even remember what they said tomorrow, but you will have to live with the consequences of your decisions. So make decisions that you can respect, and understand this. You will not always feel strong. There will be days when you feel exhausted. There will be days when you question yourself. There will be moments when you want to quit. Strength is not never experiencing those feelings. Strength is refusing to let those feelings permanently decide your direction. You can rest, you can slow down, you can rethink your strategy, but do not abandon yourself. Return to your purpose. Return to your priorities. Return to the work. One step, then another, then another. That is how people rebuild. Not through one dramatic moment, through repeated decisions. And one day, you look back and realize that the person who once thought they could not survive without certain people, certain opportunities, or certain circumstances is gone. You survived. You adapted. You became stronger. You learned. You built. And now you understand something you could not understand before. You do not need life to guarantee that nothing will go wrong. You need confidence that you can handle it when something does. That is real resilience. That is real mental strength. And that is what it means to become difficult to break. The world will try to convince you that becoming ruthless means becoming cruel. It does not. Real ruthlessness is much deeper than aggression. It is the willingness to make difficult decisions when your emotions want comfort. It is the ability to walk away from what destroys your future. It is the discipline to continue when motivation disappears. It is the courage to disappoint people who benefited from your lack of boundaries. And it is the strength to remain yourself even after life gives you reasons to become bitter. You do not need to become heartless. You need to become harder to manipulate. You do not need to become cold. You need to become emotionally controlled. You do not need to destroy people who hurt you. You need to stop allowing them to control your life. This is the final lesson. The world will never become completely safe. People will never become completely predictable. Failure will never disappear. Rejection will always exist. Disappointment will always exist. Uncertainty will always exist. You cannot eliminate these things, but you can eliminate your dependence on perfect circumstances. You can become the kind of person who functions even when circumstances are difficult. You can become the kind of person who keeps moving after rejection. You can become the kind of person who learns from failure. You can become the kind of person who remains calm under pressure. You can become the kind of person who does not collapse when someone walks away. That is the real goal. Not